Marcus heard the splash before he heard the scream. The river behind the biker bar was supposed to be his secret sleeping spot under the broken pier, not a place to watch a 7-year-old girl slip through the rotted dock planks and vanish beneath the black water. He didn't think, just dove. Icy current dragged at his torn clothes as Lily's flailing hand disappeared into the murky depths. One rock, one crack, then her hand in his. By the time he dragged her to shore, engines were roaring overhead, flashlights cutting through the dark. A deep voice growled, "Who touched my daughter?" Welcome to the Hells Angels family. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because this story will shake your soul in ways you won't expect. To my faithful subscribers who've been here from the beginning, may God continue to bless you abundantly. Before we dive in, let's lift this moment up in prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you asking for your divine protection over everyone watching right now. Bless their families, Lord. Heal their bodies, provide for their needs, and give them peace that surpasses all understanding. Surround them with your favor and let your presence be felt in their lives today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, what you're about to witness isn't just a story about a biker brotherhood. It's about a homeless 12-year-old boy, a feared Hells Angels president, and a little girl named Lily whose drowning moment sets off a chain of dangerous secrets, betrayal, and unexpected redemption when the truth about her father and the boy's past collides. Marcus heard the splash before he saw the water. The sound tore through the cool Los Angeles night like a gunshot, echoing off the graffiti-stained back wall of Rico's bar, a worn-down biker hangout near the concrete banks of the LA River where people kept their heads down and questions went unanswered. It was the kind of place where broken men drank away broken dreams, where the neon sign out front flickered between red and darkness, and where a 12-year-old homeless boy could hide behind the dumpsters without anyone caring enough to chase him away. Marcus had been crouched under a broken picnic table for the past 2 hours, his stomach growling so loud he was sure someone would hear it over the rumble of motorcycles and the classic rock bleeding from the bar's open windows. He clutched his backpack, a faded blue thing with one broken strap, against his chest like a lifeline. Everything he owned was in that bag. 2 torn t-shirts that didn't fit right. A blanket with holes in it that smelled like smoke. A half-empty water bottle he'd refilled from a gas station bathroom sink. And a photograph he couldn't bring himself to throw away, no matter how many times he told himself it didn't matter anymore. He wasn't supposed to be there. But then again, he wasn't supposed to be anywhere. The last foster home had kicked him out 3 weeks ago after he'd gotten into a fight with the older kid who kept stealing his food. Social services had stopped calling after the second time he ran away. The shelters were full, or they asked too many questions, or they made him feel like he was drowning in a room full of air. So he moved. Every night. Different alleys. Different corners. Different hiding spots where the world couldn't find him. Tonight, it was Rico's bar. Tomorrow, who knew? The scream came next, high-pitched, desperate, slicing through the low hum of conversations and clinking beer bottles like a knife through skin. Marcus's head snapped up. His heart kicked hard against his ribs. That wasn't an adult scream. That was a kid. He crawled forward on his hands and knees, dirt and gravel scraping his palms, and peered over the edge of the wooden dock that jutted out over the river behind the bar. The LA River wasn't like the rivers in movies, clean and sparkling under the sun. This was a concrete ditch filled with runoff, trash, and secrets people wanted to forget. The water ran black under the dim streetlights, moving faster than it looked, pulling everything downstream toward the drainage tunnels that swallowed the city's waste. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. A small figure thrashed in the water below, tiny hands slapping desperately at the surface before disappearing under. Pink sneakers kicked uselessly against the current. A purple hoodie, already soaked through, dragged her down like an anchor. Her head bobbed up once, mouth open in a silent gasp, and then she went under again. 7 years old, maybe younger. She was drowning, and no one inside the bar could hear her over the music. For a heartbeat, Marcus didn't move. He couldn't, because for a split second, he didn't see the girl in the water. He saw someone else. Another face. Another night 3 years ago when he'd stood on the side of a hospital bed, watching his mother's hand slip from his, watching the machines go quiet while doctors spoke in hushed tones and social workers asked him questions he didn't know how to answer. He'd been too small then, too helpless, too late. But he wasn't too late now. Marcus didn't think. He jumped. The river slammed into his chest like a freight train, stealing his breath and filling his mouth with the taste of metal, garbage, and chemicals. The cold hit him like a fist, shocking his system, making his muscles seize. The current was stronger than it looked from above, pulling him sideways, dragging him toward the black mouth of the drainage tunnel downstream. His shoes, stolen from a donation bin outside a church 2 weeks ago, filled with water and became anchors, pulling him down. He kicked them off and dove deeper. The girl was sinking fast, her small body going limp as the water swallowed her. Marcus's lungs screamed for air. His vision blurred. His arms felt like lead. But he kicked harder, reached farther, stretching his fingers toward the flash of purple fabric disappearing into the darkness below. His hand closed around wet cloth. He pulled. The girl's hoodie bunched in his fist, and he dragged her upward, fighting the current, fighting the weight, fighting the voice in his head that whispered he wasn't strong enough for this. He was just a homeless kid, a nobody, a throwaway. Why was he even trying? Because she was just a kid, too. Marcus broke the surface, gasping, choking on air and river water. The girl came up with him, coughing violently, vomiting water onto his shoulder. Her arms shot out and wrapped around his neck with a grip so tight it nearly choked him. She was crying now, huge, shaking sobs that made her whole body tremble. "I got you," Marcus rasped, his voice barely working. "I got you." He kicked toward the muddy shore, arms burning, legs screaming, vision tunneling to a pinpoint. His hand hit solid ground, then his knee. Then he crawled forward on his elbows, dragging them both out of the water, until finally, he collapsed onto the dirt, the girl still clinging to him like he was the only solid thing left in the world. For a brief second, lying there under the yellow glow of the bar's flickering security light, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Like he mattered. Like maybe saving one person could make up for all the times he couldn't save anyone, not even himself. Then the motorcycles came. The sound started low. A distant rumble that Marcus felt in his chest before he heard it with his ears. Then it grew. Louder. Closer. Engines roaring down the alley behind Rico's bar, one after another, like thunder rolling in from every direction. Headlights cut through the darkness, blinding him, pinning him to the ground like an insect under a microscope. Marcus squinted, heart hammering, as shadows on chrome beasts surrounded them. 20 bikes. Maybe more. He couldn't count. They circled the clearing like wolves, engines growling, headlights creating a cage of light he couldn't escape from. The girl, Lily, he would learn her name was Lily, sobbed into his torn t-shirt, shivering violently against him. Marcus tried to stand, but his legs gave out. He was too cold, too tired, too small. His body felt like it belonged to someone else, like he was watching himself from a distance, waiting to see what happened next. Men dismounted from the bikes. Big men. Dangerous men. Leather vests covered in patches Marcus didn't recognize. Heavy boots that crunched on gravel. Faces carved by bad choices, hard years, and nights that ended in blood. Tattoos crawled up their arms, across their necks, telling stories Marcus didn't want to know. Some of them carried bats. Others had knives on their belts. One had a gun tucked into his waistband. They didn't speak. They just stared. Subscribe now. You won't believe what happens when Reaper finds out the truth about Marcus. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. One man stepped forward, and the air itself seemed to bend around him. He was broad-shouldered and silent, his presence swallowing the space around him, making the other men look small by comparison. He wore dark sunglasses even though it was nearly midnight. His leather vest was covered in patches. Some Marcus recognized from late-night news stories about gang violence. Others he didn't. But there was one patch he couldn't miss, stitched across the back in bold letters. Hell's Angels, Los Angeles. The man's arms were covered in ink, skulls wreathed in flames, names of the dead, dates that probably marked funerals. His hands were scarred. His knuckles were thick with old breaks that had healed wrong. This was a man who had hurt people. A man who didn't ask questions before he pulled the trigger. They called him Reaper, president of the East Los Angeles chapter. And Marcus was holding his daughter. Reaper stopped 3 feet away, staring down at the soaking wet boy cradling Lily against his chest. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were Lily's quiet crying, the hum of idling engines, and Marcus's ragged breathing. The air felt heavy, thick with something Marcus couldn't name. Danger, maybe. Or judgment. Or both. Marcus couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. He'd heard stories about men like this. Men who didn't forgive. Men who didn't forget. Men who made people disappear into the concrete and the river and the places no one talked about. Lily, Reaper's voice was low, controlled, but Marcus heard something underneath it, something sharp and cold and barely restrained. Come here. Lily shook her head, burying her face deeper into Marcus's chest, her small fingers gripping his shirt so tight the fabric tore. Now, she didn't move. Marcus felt her trembling against him, felt her heart beating like a hummingbird's wings. She was terrified, not of him, of something else. Or maybe she was just in shock. He didn't know. All he knew was that she wasn't letting go, and he wasn't sure what would happen if he tried to make her. Reaper crouched down slowly, removing his sunglasses and tucking them into his vest. His eyes were dark, not brown, not black, but something in between. Eyes that had seen too much. Eyes that didn't blink. He looked at his daughter first, scanning her face, her arms, her legs, checking for injuries. Then he looked at Marcus. Really looked at him. At the torn clothes hanging off his thin frame. At the dirt caked under his fingernails. At the way his ribs showed through his wet shirt. At the backpack lying in the mud a few feet away with everything Marcus owned spilling out of it. A photograph. A blanket. Nothing else worth keeping. You pulled her out? Reaper asked. Marcus nodded. His voice stuck somewhere in his throat. She fell through the dock? Another nod. Reaper's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. He turned his head slightly, addressing someone behind him without breaking eye contact with Marcus. His voice dropped to something colder than the river. Who was supposed to be watching her? Silence. Heavy and suffocating. Then a younger voice, shaky and desperate. She was playing inside, boss. I swear to God, I only looked away for a minute. She wanted juice, and I went to the bar, and when I came back she was gone, and... Quiet. The word cut like a blade. The voice stopped mid-sentence. The young man, barely 20, Marcus guessed, took a step back, his face pale in the headlights. Reaper stood up, towering over Marcus, and for a terrible second, the boy thought this was it. He saved the girl, and now he was going to die for it anyway because that's how the world worked. Good deeds didn't matter. Not in places like this. Not for kids like him. Then Reaper did something Marcus didn't expect. He held out his hand. Marcus stared at it, confused. The man's hand was huge, scarred across the knuckles, a tattoo of a skull on his wrist. Was this a test? A trick? Was he supposed to take it? Or would that be the mistake that got him killed? He glanced at the other bikers watching from the shadows, their faces unreadable. Some had their arms crossed. Others leaned against their bikes, waiting. Take it, Reaper said quietly. You're shaking. Marcus reached up slowly, hesitantly, and Reaper's hand closed around his. The grip was iron. Steady. Strong. Reaper pulled him to his feet in one smooth motion, and Marcus swayed, dizzy from cold and exhaustion. His legs buckled, and Reaper's other hand shot out, steadying him by the shoulder. What's your name? Reaper asked. Marcus. His voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. Where are your parents, Marcus? The question hit harder than the river. Marcus looked away, his throat tightening, tears burning behind his eyes that he refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of these men. Don't have any, he said. Reaper's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something almost human. He glanced at the backpack again, at the photograph lying face up in the mud, edges curling, image fading. Marcus followed his gaze and saw it. The faded picture of a man in a work uniform, smiling at the camera, one arm around a woman holding a baby. His parents. The only proof they'd ever existed. Reaper went very still. He stepped forward, bent down, and picked up the photograph with both hands, cradling it like something fragile, something sacred. His fingers traced the edges carefully, almost reverently, like it might fall apart if he held it too tight. When he looked up at Marcus again, all the color had drained from his face beneath the tattoos and scars. "Where did you get this?" His voice was barely above a whisper now, stripped of all authority, all control. Marcus's stomach twisted into knots. It's mine. That's my dad. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? This story is about to change everything. The air changed. Shifted. The other bikers shifted too, murmuring to each other, glancing between Reaper and Marcus with expressions Marcus couldn't read. Reaper stared at the photograph, then at Marcus, then back at the photograph. His hand tightened around it until the edges crumpled slightly. "What's your last name?" Reaper's voice sounded strained now, like every word cost him something. "Chun. Marcus Chun." Reaper closed his eyes. His shoulders sagged. When he opened his eyes again, they were filled with something Marcus had never seen in another person's face before, something that looked like regret, like pain, like guilt so heavy it could crush bones. Lily finally pulled away from Marcus, stumbling toward her father on shaking legs. Reaper scooped her up with one arm, holding her tight against his chest, pressing his face into her wet hair. But he never took his eyes off Marcus, never blinked. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Marcus felt like the ground was shifting beneath him, like the entire world had tilted sideways, and he was the only one who didn't understand why. What did this man know? Why did the photograph make him look like he'd seen a ghost? Finally, Reaper spoke. His voice was quiet now, heavy with years Marcus didn't understand, weighted with secrets he couldn't imagine. "I know your father." Marcus's heart stopped. The world went silent. Even the engines seemed to fade into nothing. "What?" Reaper handed the photograph back slowly, reluctantly, like it physically hurt him to let it go. His hands were shaking now, just barely, just enough for Marcus to notice. His face was locked down tight, unreadable, but his eyes betrayed him. "Get in the van," Reaper said, his voice hard again, distant, putting walls back up. "We need to talk." "About what?" Marcus's voice cracked. "What do you know about my dad?" "He's dead. He died when I was 9. What could you possibly?" "Get in the van." It wasn't a request. It was an order. The kind of order that ended arguments before they started. Marcus stood frozen, his mind racing. His father had been a construction worker. A nobody. Someone who went to work, came home, kissed his wife, played with his son. There was nothing special about him. Nothing that would connect him to a man like Reaper. Nothing that made sense. Unless everything Marcus thought he knew was a lie. Reaper turned away, carrying Lily toward the motorcycles. He stopped at the edge of the light, his back to Marcus, shoulders tense, spine rigid like he was holding himself together by force of will alone. "About what?" Marcus shouted, desperation breaking through. "Tell me what you know." Reaper didn't turn around, didn't look back, but his voice carried across the clearing, quiet and final, like a door slamming shut. "Everything," he said. "I know everything." And then he walked away, disappearing into the ring of headlights and shadows, leaving Marcus standing alone in the mud, soaking wet and shaking, staring at the photograph in his hands and wondering if the man who just saved his life was the same man who destroyed it. The van smelled like leather, motor oil, and something else Marcus couldn't identify, something metallic that made his stomach turn. He sat in the back on a bench seat that had seen better days, wrapped in a blanket someone had thrown at him without a word. His wet clothes clung to his skin, making him shiver despite the heat blasting from the vents. 3 bikers sat across from him, silent and watching, their faces unreadable in the dim light filtering through the tinted windows. Marcus kept his eyes down, his fingers wrapped around the photograph in his lap, protecting it like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. Maybe it was. Everything else felt like it was slipping away. The ground beneath him, the truth he thought he knew, the world that made sense just 2 hours ago. The van rumbled through the streets of East Los Angeles. turning corners Marcus didn't recognize, passing buildings that blurred together in the darkness. He had no idea where they were taking him. No idea what Reaper meant when he said he knew everything. No idea if he was going to make it through the night alive. One of the bikers, a massive man with a beard down to his chest and a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, leaned forward slightly. "You got guts, kid," he said, his voice surprisingly soft for someone who looked like he could break Marcus in half without trying. Not many people would jump in that river. Especially not for someone they don't know. Marcus didn't respond. He didn't know what to say, didn't know if saying the wrong thing would get him hurt. The man seemed to sense his fear and leaned back again, exchanging a glance with the others. They didn't speak after that. Marcus alone with his thoughts, and his thoughts were screaming. The van finally stopped 20 minutes later. The back doors swung open, and harsh fluorescent light flooded in, making Marcus squint. Someone grabbed his arm, not rough, but firm, and pulled him out onto cracked pavement. He stumbled, his legs still weak from the river, and looked up. They were in a parking lot behind a low, industrial-looking building with bars on the windows and cameras mounted on every corner. A faded sign above the reinforced steel door read, "Brotherhood Auto Repair," but Marcus knew immediately that wasn't what this place really was. There were too many motorcycles, too many men, too much security for a repair shop. This was the clubhouse, the Hells Angels headquarters. Reaper stood near the entrance, Lily still in his arms, now wrapped in a dry jacket 3 sizes too big for her. She'd stopped crying, but her eyes were red and swollen, and she kept her face buried against her father's shoulder. Reaper's expression was carved from stone as he watched Marcus being led toward the door. "Bring him inside," Reaper said quietly. "Second room on the left. Get him dry clothes and food. Don't let him leave. Don't let him leave." The words settled over Marcus like chains. He wasn't a guest here. He was a prisoner. A prisoner who'd just saved the warden's daughter and somehow made everything more complicated because of a photograph he didn't understand. Inside, the clubhouse was exactly what Marcus expected and nothing like it at the same time. The main room was large and open, with a bar along one wall, pool tables in the corner, and leather couches that had seen decades of use. Motorcycle parts hung on the walls like trophies, handlebars, mirrors, license plates from states Marcus had never been to. The floor was concrete, stained with oil and God knew what else. Men lounged around, drinking beer, playing cards, talking in low voices that stopped when Marcus walked in. Every eye turned toward him, some curious, some suspicious, some downright hostile. A woman, mid-40s, with graying hair tied back in a ponytail and arms covered in colorful tattoos, appeared from a side door and looked Marcus up and down with an expression that might have been pity. "Come on, honey," she said, her voice raspy from too many cigarettes. "Let's get you out of those wet clothes before you catch pneumonia." She led him down a narrow hallway lined with closed doors, each one marked with a name or a symbol Marcus didn't recognize. She stopped at one labeled "Guest" and pushed it open. Inside was a small room with a twin bed, a dresser, and a single window with bars on it. Clean, but sparse. A cage with a mattress. The woman, she said her name was Rita, handed him a stack of clothes that looked like they belonged to someone much bigger than him. Sweatpants, a t-shirt, socks. "Bathroom's next door," she said, pointing. "Get changed. I'll bring you food in 10 minutes. Don't try anything stupid, kid. There are cameras everywhere, and the guys outside aren't as friendly as me." She left, closing the door behind her. Marcus heard the lock click. He stood there for a long moment, dripping onto the floor, staring at the clothes in his hands. Then he moved mechanically, peeling off his wet shirt, his torn jeans, wrapping himself in fabric that smelled like detergent and strangers. The sweatpants were so big he had to roll the waistband 3 times to keep them from falling down. The shirt hung off him like a dress. He sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted, confused, terrified. His body ached everywhere. His lungs still burned from the river. But worse than any physical pain was the question hammering inside his skull over and over. What did Reaper know about his father? Rita returned 10 minutes later with a tray, a sandwich, chips, a bottle of water, and an apple. Real food. More than Marcus had eaten in 3 days. His stomach growled so loud it echoed in the small room. "Eat," Rita said, setting the tray on the dresser. "You look like you're about to pass out." Marcus didn't argue. He tore into the sandwich like a starving animal, barely tasting it, just needing something, anything, to fill the hollow ache inside him. Rita watched him with an expression Marcus couldn't read. Not quite sympathy, not quite pity, something in between. "Reaper says you saved Lily," she said after a moment. Marcus nodded, his mouth too full to speak. "That's the only reason you're still breathing, kid. You know that, right?" He swallowed hard, the food suddenly tasting like ash. "What's he going to do to me?" Rita shrugged. "That's not for me to say. But I've known Reaper for 15 years, and I've never seen him look at someone the way he looked at you out there. Like he'd seen a ghost. Or maybe like he owed you something he couldn't pay back. Hit subscribe now. The next twist will leave you speechless." She paused at the door, her hand on the frame. "Whatever happens, kid, you did a good thing tonight. Don't forget that." Then she was gone, and Marcus was alone again with his thoughts and half a sandwich he couldn't finish. He must have dozed off because the next thing he knew, someone was shaking his shoulder. Marcus jerked awake, heart pounding, fists up defensively. But it was just one of the bikers from earlier, the one with the scar through his eyebrow. "Boss wants to see you," the man said. "Now." Marcus followed him down the hallway, past the main room where conversations died the moment he appeared, through a door at the back marked "Private," and into an office that looked more like a command center. Monitors lined one wall showing security camera feeds from around the building. A massive desk dominated the center, covered in papers, maps, and what looked like ledgers. And sitting behind it, Lily asleep in a chair beside him, was Reaper. He looked different now. Tired. Older. The sunglasses were gone, and without them, Marcus could see the lines around his eyes, the gray starting to thread through his hair. This wasn't just the president of a motorcycle club. This was a father who'd almost lost his daughter. A man carrying weight Marcus couldn't begin to understand. "Sit," Reaper said, gesturing to a chair across from him. Marcus sat, his hands gripping his knees to keep them from shaking. For a long moment, Reaper just stared at him, studying his face like he was searching for something. Then he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "You saved my daughter's life tonight," Reaper said. "That means I owe you. In my world, that's a debt that doesn't go away. You understand?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't want anything. She was drowning. I couldn't just." "I know." Reaper's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. "And that's exactly why I owe you. You didn't do it because you wanted something. You did it because it was the right thing to do. That's rare, especially in this city." He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder, worn, yellowed with age, held together with rubber bands. He set it on the desk between them, but didn't open it yet. "Your father," Reaper said slowly, carefully, like each word was a landmine. "Daniel Chun. Worked construction for Morrison and Sons. Died in a work accident 8 years ago when a scaffolding collapsed. That's what you were told, right?" Marcus's throat tightened. "How do you know that?" "Because I was there." The room spun. Marcus gripped the arms of the chair to keep from falling. "What?" Reaper's jaw worked like he was chewing on words too bitter to swallow. "Your father wasn't just a construction worker, Marcus. He was a witness. He saw something he wasn't supposed to see. Something that could have put a lot of dangerous people behind bars. The Iron Vipers, a rival MC, found out. They came after him. I tried to protect him. We had a deal. He'd testify. We'd keep him safe until the trial. But someone leaked the location of the safe house." Reaper's hand curled into a fist on the desk. "The scaffolding didn't collapse by accident, Marcus. It was sabotage, and I couldn't stop it. Like this video, if you're still with us, you need to see what Marcus does next." Marcus couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His father hadn't died in an accident. He'd been murdered, and the man sitting across from him, the man whose daughter he'd just saved, had been there, had known, had failed to save him. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. "Because you deserve the truth," Reaper said. "And because the men who killed your father are still out there. And now that you're here, now that they know you exist, they're going to come looking for you. He slid the folder across the desk. Your father left something behind. Evidence. Hidden. He never told us where, and we never found it. But if the Vipers think you know where it is. The door to the office burst open. A younger biker stumbled in, out of breath, eyes wide with panic. Boss, we got a problem. Someone just torched one of our storage units on 7th, and they left a message spray-painted on the wall. Reaper stood up slowly, his entire body going rigid. What message? The young man swallowed hard. It says, we know you have the Chin kid. Hand him over, or Lily's next. The room went dead silent. Marcus felt the floor drop out from under him. Reaper's face went pale, then flushed with rage, so intense Marcus could feel the heat radiating off him. Lily stirred in her chair, mumbling in her sleep, and Reaper's eyes shifted to her, then back to Marcus. Get every man we have, Reaper said, his voice cold as death. Lock down the clubhouse. No one gets in or out. And find me everything we have on the Viper's current locations. The young biker ran out. Reaper turned back to Marcus. And for the first time since they'd met, Marcus saw something in his eyes that terrified him more than anything else. Fear. They know you're here, Reaper said quietly. And they're not going to stop until they get what they want. Marcus's voice came out as a whisper. What do they want? Reaper's answer was a death sentence wrapped in 3 words. You. And Lily. Marcus couldn't sleep. How could he? Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the message spray-painted on the wall. We know you have the Chin kid. Hand him over, or Lily's next. The words looped in his mind like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from, each repetition tightening the knot of fear in his chest. He lay on the narrow bed in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the clubhouse transforming into a fortress. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. Voices barking orders. The metallic click of guns being loaded. Engines roaring as bikers took up positions around the perimeter. Somewhere outside, men were preparing for war, and Marcus was the reason why. A 7-year-old girl was in danger because of him. The thought made him sick. He sat up, his body still aching from the river, and looked at the locked door. Rita had brought him dinner 2 hours ago. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, but he barely touched it. His stomach was too twisted with guilt and confusion to accept food. She'd also brought his backpack, now dry, sitting in the corner like a silent witness to everything he'd lost. Marcus pulled it over and dug through it until he found the photograph. His father's face stared back at him, frozen in a moment of happiness that felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. A different world. One where construction workers were just construction workers, and scaffolding collapsed because of accidents, not murder. Your father was a witness. He saw something he wasn't supposed to see. Reaper's words echoed in Marcus's head. What had his father seen? What kind of evidence had he hidden? And why hadn't he told anyone? Not the police, not his family, not even Marcus's mother before she died. Marcus's hands tightened around the photograph. He needed answers, and he knew exactly where to find them. The hallway outside was empty when Marcus cracked open the door at 2:47 a.m. Most of the bikers were either outside on patrol or in the main room strategizing. He could hear their voices, muffled, intense, drifting down the corridor. He slipped out of his room, barefoot and silent, moving like a ghost through the dimly lit hallway. He remembered where Reaper's office was. Second door on the right, past the bathroom, before the exit to the garage. The door was closed but not locked. A mistake. Or maybe Reaper had never expected a 12-year-old kid to be stupid enough to break into the president's private office in the middle of a lockdown. Marcus pushed the door open just wide enough to slip inside, then closed it behind him with a soft click. His heart hammered so loud he was sure someone would hear it through the walls. The office was dark except for the glow of the security monitors on the far wall, casting everything in shades of blue and gray. Marcus moved carefully around the desk, his eyes adjusting to the darkness, searching. Reaper had pulled a folder from somewhere. A drawer, maybe. Or, there. A filing cabinet in the corner, half hidden behind a coat rack. Marcus crouched in front of it and tried the top drawer. Locked. The second drawer. Locked. The third drawer pulled open with a metallic groan that made Marcus freeze, his breath caught in his throat. He waited, 10 seconds, 20, but no one came bursting through the door. He exhaled and looked inside. The drawer was packed with manila folders, each one labeled with names Marcus didn't recognize. He pulled them out one by one, squinting at the tabs in the dim light. Anderson, Briggs, Cortez. Nothing that meant anything to him. He was about to give up when his fingers brushed against something at the very back. A folder wedged behind the others, its tab facing backward like someone had deliberately tried to hide it. Marcus pulled it out and turned it over. The name written on the tab in faded ink made his blood run cold. Chun, Daniel. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside were documents Marcus didn't fully understand. Police reports, witness statements, court filings stamped sealed in red ink. But there were also photographs. Crime scene photos that made Marcus's stomach lurch. A construction site. Yellow tape. Broken scaffolding. And beneath it, covered with a tarp, the outline of a body. His father's body. Marcus forced himself to keep looking. Beneath the photos were handwritten notes in Reaper's blocky handwriting. D. Chen witnessed Viper's smuggling operation, Port of Long Beach, August 2017. Agreed to testify in exchange for witness protection. FBI involvement confirmed. Safe house compromised September 14, 17. Chen killed before trial. Evidence never recovered. Suspect, mole within LAPD or federal task force. Marcus's vision blurred. He blinked hard, trying to focus, trying to make sense of what he was reading. His father had been helping the FBI. He'd seen a smuggling operation, drugs, maybe, or guns. And he'd agreed to testify against the Iron Vipers. But someone had betrayed him. Someone had given up his location. And the Vipers had killed him before he could ever make it to court. Evidence never recovered. That's what the Vipers wanted. Not Marcus. Not really. They wanted whatever his father had hidden, proof of their crimes, something damaging enough that they were willing to threaten a child to get it back. But Marcus had no idea where it was. No idea what it even looked like. His father had never told him anything, never left a clue. Or had he? Marcus flipped through more pages, his hands moving faster now, desperate. There, near the back of the folder, a photocopy of something that looked like a letter. The handwriting was different. Messier. More personal. It was addressed to someone named Brother T. If you're reading this, it means something went wrong. The evidence is safe. Only two people know where. Me and her. If I don't make it, she'll know what to do. Trust her. Protect her. Protect my son. He's all that matters now. It was signed with just an initial, D. Subscribe now if you want to know who she is. The answer changes everything. Marcus read it 3 times, his mind racing. Her. Who was her? His mother had died years ago, long after his father. So who else had his father trusted? Who else had known about the evidence? A sound outside the door made Marcus's heart stop. Footsteps. Heavy boots on concrete. Getting closer. He shoved the papers back into the folder, his hands clumsy with panic, and crammed it into the filing cabinet. He eased the drawer closed just as the doorknob turned. Marcus dove behind the desk, pressing himself flat against the wall, barely breathing. The door opened. Light from the hallway spilled in. A shadow filled the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered. Reaper. I know you're in here, Reaper said quietly. He didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. Come out. Marcus stayed frozen. Maybe if he didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't exist. Marcus, I'm not going to hurt you, but we need to talk. Now. Slowly, Marcus crawled out from behind the desk. Reaper stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him with an expression Marcus couldn't read. Not anger, not disappointment. Something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. The filing cabinet. Reaper asked. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Reaper sighed and stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He flipped on a small desk lamp, bathing the room in warm yellow light. Then he walked to the filing cabinet, opened the 3rd drawer, and pulled out the Chin folder like he'd known exactly what Marcus had been looking for. You read it, Reaper said. It wasn't a question. I needed to know, Marcus whispered. I needed to know what happened to him. And now you do. Reaper set the folder on the desk between them and sat down heavily in his chair. He looked older in the lamplight, the lines on his face deeper, the weight on his shoulders visible. Your father was a good man, Marcus. Better than most. He saw something terrible, and instead of looking the other way like most people would, he chose to do the right thing. It got him killed. Who's her? Marcus asked suddenly. The letter mentioned someone. A woman who knew where the evidence was. Who was she? Reaper's expression flickered, just for a second, and Marcus saw it. Recognition. Maybe even guilt. I don't know, Reaper said slowly. Your father never told me. He said it was safer that way. If I didn't know, I couldn't tell anyone, even if they tortured it out of me. But you have a guess. Reaper hesitated. Then he opened the folder and pulled out a photograph Marcus hadn't seen before. It showed his father standing next to a woman Marcus didn't recognize, mid-30s, dark hair, kind eyes. They were standing in front of a small diner, smiling at the camera. This was taken 3 weeks before your father died, Reaper said. We found it in his wallet. No name. No explanation. Just this photo. Marcus stared at the woman's face, searching for something familiar, some connection. But there was nothing. He'd never seen her before in his life. The diner, Marcus said suddenly, pointing at the sign in the background. Rosie's Cafe. Do you know where that is? Used to be on 8th Street in Boyle Heights, Reaper said. But it closed down years ago. Been abandoned ever since. Marcus's mind was racing now, connecting pieces that didn't quite fit yet but felt important. What if that's where he hid it? What if the evidence is there? We searched that place top to bottom after your father died, Reaper said. Pulled up floorboards, checked the walls, went through the basement. Nothing. Maybe you didn't know where to look, Marcus argued. Maybe only she knew. The woman in the photo. Reaper leaned back, rubbing his face with both hands. Even if you're right, we have no idea who she is or where to find her. And we're running out of time. The Vipers aren't going to wait around while we... A phone on the desk buzzed. Reaper grabbed it, his expression darkening as he read the screen. What is it? Marcus asked. Reaper's jaw tightened. One of our guys just spotted movement 2 blocks from here. 3 vans. No plates. Circling the neighborhood. The Vipers. Who else? Reaper stood up, shoving the folder into a drawer and locking it this time. They're testing our defenses, seeing how tight we've locked things down. They'll hit us soon. Maybe tonight. Maybe tomorrow. But it's coming. Hit that like button. Marcus is about to make a choice that will change his life. Marcus felt the fear clawing up his throat again. What are you going to do? Reaper looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, Marcus saw something in the man's eyes that terrified him more than anything else. Uncertainty. Reaper didn't have all the answers. Didn't have a plan that guaranteed everyone would survive. I'm going to protect my daughter, Reaper said quietly. No matter what it costs. And me? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. Reaper's expression softened just slightly. You saved Lily's life. That makes you family. And I protect family. Before Marcus could respond, the office door burst open. Rita stood there, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. Reaper, she said breathlessly. You need to come to the main room. Right now. What happened? Rita's voice shook. Lily's gone. The world stopped. Reaper's face went white, then flushed with a rage so intense the air itself seemed to vibrate. He moved past Rita like a storm, and Marcus followed, his legs barely working, his mind screaming. In the main room, bikers stood around Lily's makeshift bed, a couch in the corner where she'd been sleeping under Rita's watch. The blankets were thrown back. The pillow was still warm, but Lily was gone. On the pillow, written in red marker in childish handwriting that definitely wasn't Lily's, was a message. Union Station. Locker 247. Midnight tomorrow. Bring the evidence, or she dies. Reaper picked up the pillow with shaking hands, staring at the message like it was a death sentence. And maybe it was. Marcus's voice broke the silence. They think I know where it is. Reaper turned to him, and Marcus saw something in his eyes he'd never seen before. Not anger. Not fear. Desperation. Do you? Reaper asked. Marcus thought about the letter. The photograph. The woman his father had trusted. The diner that had been abandoned for years. He thought about Lily's face when he'd pulled her from the river. Her small hands gripping his shirt. Her terrified sobs. And he made a choice. No, Marcus said. But I know how to find it. Dawn broke over East Los Angeles in shades of orange and gray, But inside the clubhouse, there was no light. Only shadows and the weight of a ticking clock. Lily had been missing for 6 hours. 6 hours that felt like 6 lifetimes to Marcus, who sat at the corner table in the main room, staring at the photograph of his father and the mysterious woman outside Rosie's cafe. Reaper hadn't slept. Marcus could see it in the way he moved, sharp, aggressive, like a caged animal looking for something to destroy. He barked orders into his phone, coordinating search parties, calling in favors from other chapters, demanding information from contacts on the street. But every call ended the same way. Nothing. No one had seen Lily. No one knew where the Iron Vipers were holding her. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. Rita sat beside Marcus, her hand resting on his shoulder, a small gesture of comfort that somehow made everything worse. Because Marcus knew the truth, this was his fault. If he'd never jumped into that river, if he'd never saved Lily, she wouldn't be in danger now. The Vipers wouldn't have known he existed. And a 7-year-old girl wouldn't be counting down the hours until midnight, terrified and alone. "Stop it," Rita said quietly, like she could read his thoughts. "Stop what? Blaming yourself. I can see it all over your face, kid. This isn't on you." "They took her because of me," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "Because they think I know where my father hid the evidence." "They took her because they're monsters," Rita corrected. "Don't give them more power than they already have." Marcus didn't respond. He just stared at the photograph, trying to will it to give him answers. Who was this woman? Where was she now? And why had his father trusted her with something so dangerous? Reaper slammed his phone down on the bar, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot. Every head turned toward him. "We've got 6 confirmed Viper locations in the city," Reaper said, his voice cold and controlled, but barely. "Warehouses, safe houses, chop shops. We hit them all simultaneously, grab anyone we can, and make them talk. Someone knows where Lily is." One of the older bikers, a gray-haired man named Trax with tattoos covering every inch of visible skin, shook his head. "That's a war, Reaper. We go in hot like that, the Vipers will retaliate. And if they get spooked, they might." "Finish that sentence and I'll put you through the wall," Reaper growled. Trax held up his hands in surrender. "I'm just saying we need to be smart about this." "I don't want smart. I want my daughter back." Marcus stood up suddenly, the chair scraping against the concrete floor. "The diner," he said. "We need to go to Rosie's cafe. That's where my father hid the evidence." "I know it." Reaper turned to him, eyes narrowed. "You said you didn't know where it was." "I said I didn't know where it was. But I know how to find it." Marcus held up the photograph. "This woman, whoever she is, she knew. My father's letter said so. And they were standing outside that diner for a reason. It wasn't random. He was showing her, trusting her." "The diner's been closed for years," Reaper said. "We searched it." "You searched it looking for a hiding place," Marcus argued. "But what if it wasn't hidden in the diner? What if it was hidden as the diner? Property records, ownership papers, safety deposit boxes registered to the business. There are a dozen ways to hide something in plain sight if you know what you're doing." Reaper stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to one of the younger bikers near the computer setup in the corner. "Pull every public record you can find on Rosie's cafe. Ownership history, tax documents, permits, everything." The young man's fingers flew across the keyboard. 30 seconds later, he looked up, his face pale. "Boss, you need to see this." Everyone crowded around the screen. Marcus pushed his way to the front, his heart pounding. The property records showed that Rosie's cafe had been owned by a woman named Rosa Delgado from 1998 until 2015, when it had been sold to a shell company called Chun Holdings, LLC. The sale had gone through 2 months before Marcus's father died. "Chun Holdings," Marcus whispered. "He bought the diner. Or used it as a front to hide something," Reaper said, his voice sharp with realization. "If the evidence is tied to the property itself, safety deposit box, storage unit registered under the business name, then we'd need the ownership papers to access it." "Where would those papers be?" Marcus asked. The biker at the computer clicked through more screens. "Last known address for Rosa Delgado is 4782 Maple Avenue, apartment 3B, Boyle Heights." Reaper was already moving toward the door. "Trax, Take 6 guys and hit the warehouse on 7th. Make noise. Make the Vipers think we're coming for them. Everyone else, with me. We're going to find Rosa Delgado. Subscribe now. What happens next will blow your mind. The apartment building on Maple Avenue was a 4-story walk-up that had seen better decades. Graffiti covered the walls, windows were boarded up, and the stairwell smelled like urine and mold. Marcus climbed behind Reaper and 4 other bikers, his legs burning, his breath coming in short gasps. They reached the 3rd floor and stopped outside apartment 3B. Reaper knocked, 3 sharp raps that echoed down the hallway. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. Break it down, Reaper ordered. One of the bikers, a massive man named Ox, stepped forward and kicked the door just below the handle. The wood splintered, and the door swung open, revealing a small, cluttered apartment. Newspapers stacked to the ceiling. Boxes overflowing with old clothes. The air thick with dust and neglect. But no Rosa Delgado. They searched quickly, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen. Marcus opened a closet and found more boxes, these ones labeled with dates going back decades. He pulled one down and sifted through the contents. Receipts, photos, menus from the diner. And then he found it. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in a plastic bag, was a small metal key attached to a tag that read, Union Station Storage, Locker 247. Marcus's blood ran cold. Locker 247. The same number the Vipers had written on Lily's pillow. Reaper, Marcus said, his voice shaking. I found it. Reaper crossed the room in 2 strides and took the key from Marcus's hand, staring at it like it was a live grenade. They already knew, he said quietly. The Vipers already knew where the evidence was. That's why they took Lily. That's why they chose that specific locker number. But how? Marcus asked. How could they know if we just figured it out? Reaper's expression darkened. Because someone told them. Someone who's been watching us. Someone. His phone rang. He answered it without looking at the screen. What? The voice on the other end was loud enough for Marcus to hear. Panicked, breathless. Boss, we got a problem. The warehouse on 7th was empty. It was a setup. The Vipers knew we were coming. And now there. Gunfire erupted in the background. Screaming. Engines roaring. Tracks. Reaper shouted into the phone. Tracks, report. The line went dead. Reaper's face went white. He turned to the others. We're compromised. The Vipers knew we'd split up. They let us find this key. This whole thing is a... The window exploded inward in a shower of glass. Marcus hit the floor as bullets tore through the apartment, shredding furniture, punching holes in the walls. Reaper grabbed him by the collar and dragged him behind the couch, shouting orders Marcus couldn't hear over the roar of automatic gunfire. Return fire came from the bikers, controlled bursts, precise, deadly. But they were outnumbered. Marcus could hear engines outside, more vehicles arriving, surrounding the building. The Vipers had been waiting. They'd known exactly where to find them. Like this video right now, you need to see if Marcus and Reaper survive. We need to move. Reaper shouted. Back door now. They ran, Marcus stumbling over debris, Reaper half carrying him, the other bikers laying down covering fire. They crashed through the apartment's back door into a narrow service hallway that led to a fire escape. Reaper kicked open the emergency exit, and they poured out onto the rusted metal stairs. Below them, 3 black vans screeched to a halt in the alley. Doors flew open. Men with masks and guns emerged, looking up at the fire escape. Go, go, go. Reaper pushed Marcus ahead of him, and they climbed, up instead of down, toward the roof. Bullets pinged off the metal stairs behind them. One of the bikers cried out and fell, clutching his leg. Another stopped to drag him upward. They reached the roof, and Reaper slammed the access door shut behind them, shoving a piece of rebar through the handle to bar it. It wouldn't hold long. Seconds, maybe. Marcus looked around desperately. They were 4 stories up. No way down except the fire escape they'd just come from. And below, the Vipers were already climbing. We're trapped, Marcus said, panic rising in his chest. Reaper pulled out his phone, dialing frantically. Not yet. Rita, I need an extraction at Maple Avenue. Roof access, now. We've got maybe 2 minutes before. The door behind them shuddered, as something heavy slammed into it from the other side. Once, twice, the rebar bent. Reaper hung up and turned to Marcus, gripping his shoulders. Listen to me very carefully. When I tell you to run, you run. You don't look back. You don't stop. You get to Union Station, you open that locker, and you take whatever's inside to the police. Not the LAPD, FBI. You tell them everything. You understand. What about you? Marcus's voice cracked. What about Lily? I'll get Lily, Reaper said. But you need to survive. That evidence is the only thing that can keep you safe. It's the only thing that can put these bastards away for good. The door exploded open. Men poured onto the roof. 5, 6, 7 of them, all armed, all moving with military precision. And leading them, a man Marcus had never seen before but recognized instantly from the hatred in Reaper's eyes. He was tall, lean, with a shaved head and a scar running from his temple to his jaw. He wore a leather vest covered in iron viper patches, and he smiled like a predator who'd just cornered his prey. Reaper, the man said, his voice smooth and cold. Been a long time. Cutter, Reaper growled. Where's my daughter? Cutter's smile widened. Safe. For now. Depends on whether you're smart enough to give me what I want. The evidence. See? You're smarter than you look. Cutter's eyes shifted to Marcus. And this must be the Chin kid. You know, you look just like your old man. Same eyes. Same stupid sense of honor that got him killed. Marcus felt Reaper's hand tighten on his shoulder, a warning to stay quiet. Let Lily go, Reaper said. Take me instead. Take the kid if you want. Just let my daughter go. Why would I do that when I can have all three? Cutter gestured, and 2 of his men stepped forward. The evidence is in locker 247. You're going to open it. You're going to hand it over. And then maybe, you'll see your daughter alive again. And if I don't, Cutter pulled out a phone and turned the screen toward them. The video showed Lily in a dark room, tied to a chair, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't hurt, not yet, but the threat was clear. Reaper's entire body went rigid. Marcus could feel the rage radiating off him like heat from a fire. Midnight, Cutter said. Union Station. Don't be late. And Reaper? Come alone. Bring backup, and she dies screaming. He turned to leave, his men following, leaving Reaper and Marcus and the wounded bikers alone on the roof. The moment they were gone, Reaper's legs gave out. He sank to his knees, his face buried in his hands, shoulders shaking. Marcus had never seen a man like Reaper break before. It was more terrifying than the gunfight had been. We have to give them the evidence, Marcus said quietly. They'll kill her anyway, Reaper said, his voice muffled. They'll kill all of us. That's what they do. Then what do we do? Reaper looked up, and Marcus saw something in his eyes that made his blood run cold. Not desperation anymore. Not fear. Pure, calculated vengeance. We give them exactly what they want, Reaper said slowly. And then we burn their entire world to the ground. The hours between dawn and midnight felt like dying in slow motion. Marcus sat in the back of Reaper's van as it cut through Los Angeles traffic, the key to locker 247 burning a hole in his pocket. Around him, 8 bikers checked weapons, loaded magazines, and spoke in low, clipped voices about angles of attack and extraction points. They were preparing for war. But Marcus was preparing for something else entirely. He was preparing to trade his life for Lily's. He'd made the decision 3 hours ago, sitting in the clubhouse bathroom with the door locked, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror. The Vipers wanted the evidence. They wanted revenge for what his father had witnessed 8 years ago, and they wanted Marcus dead so that no one would ever come looking for answers. He could give them all 3, or at least make them think he could. You're quiet, Reaper said from the driver's seat, his eyes finding Marcus in the rearview mirror. Too quiet. Just thinking, Marcus said. About what? About Lily. About whether she's scared right now. Reaper's jaw tightened. She's terrified, but she's strong. Stronger than people think. She'll hold on until we get there. And then what? Marcus asked. We hand over the evidence and hope they keep their word? No, Reaper said flatly. We hand over the evidence, and the second Lily's clear, we put bullets in every one of those bastards. Cutter, his lieutenants, anyone wearing Viper colors. We end this tonight. The bikers murmured agreement, but Marcus felt sick. More death, more violence, an endless cycle of revenge that would keep spinning long after tonight, pulling more people into its orbit, destroying more families. There had to be another way. Union Station loomed ahead like a cathedral of steel and glass, its Art Deco architecture illuminated by spotlights that made it look almost beautiful. At 11:47 p.m., the terminal was mostly empty, just a few stragglers waiting for late trains, homeless people sleeping on benches, and security guards doing their rounds. None of them noticed the convoy of motorcycles pulling into the parking structure across the street. Reaper killed the engine and turned to face his crew. Rita, you're on overwatch with the rifle. Position yourself on the second-floor walkway with a clear line of sight to the lockers. Ox, you and Kane take the east entrance. If anyone tries to flank us, you put them down. The rest of you, spread out but stay close. The second I signal, you move in. He turned to Marcus. You stay behind me. You don't do anything stupid. You don't try to be a hero. You open the locker, you hand me whatever's inside, and you get out of the line of fire. Understood. Marcus nodded, but his mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating distances, exits, possibilities. They entered the station through the main doors, and Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. The vast main hall stretched out before them, its vaulted ceilings and polished floors echoing every footstep. To the right, rows of old-fashioned storage lockers lined the wall, dozens of them, painted industrial gray, each one numbered. Locker 247 was in the middle of the third row, and standing in front of it, arms crossed, was Cutter. He wasn't alone. 6 iron vipers flanked him. 3 on each side, all armed, all watching with predatory focus. But Marcus's eyes went immediately to the small figure sitting on the floor behind them, hands zip-tied in front of her, a piece of duct tape over her mouth. Lily. Her eyes went wide when she saw them, and she tried to stand, but one of the vipers pushed her back down, not rough, but firm enough to make the point. Marcus felt Reaper stiffen beside him, his entire body going rigid with barely controlled rage. Right on time, Cutter called out, his voice echoing through the empty station. I appreciate punctuality. Shows respect. Where's the rest of your crew? Reaper asked, scanning the station. I know you didn't come with just 6 guys. You're right. I didn't. Cutter smiled. They're in position. Snipers on the upper levels, blocking the exits, waiting in vehicles outside. If you try anything at all, this place becomes a massacre. And your daughter's the first to go. Reaper's hand twitched toward the gun tucked into his belt, but he stopped himself. Let her go. I'll give you the evidence. Just let her go. Open the locker first. Marcus stepped forward, pulling the key from his pocket. His hands were shaking so badly, he almost dropped it. He walked slowly toward locker 247, acutely aware of every gun pointed in his direction, every breath, every heartbeat. The key slid into the lock. It turned with a metallic click. The door swung open. Inside was a single item, a small external hard drive in a plastic evidence bag, along with a handwritten note. Marcus pulled them both out, his heart sinking. This was it. 8 years of hiding. 8 years of running. 8 years of people dying. All for this tiny piece of technology. He read the note quickly. To whoever finds this. The footage on this drive shows Iron Viper leadership coordinating a weapons smuggling operation with corrupt LAPD officers. Names, faces, dates, locations. Everything the FBI needs to dismantle both organizations. If I'm dead, it means they got to me first. Don't let it be for nothing. Daniel Chun. Marcus's hands tightened around the hard drive. His father had died for this. Had hidden it. Had trusted a woman named Rosa to keep the secret. And now Marcus held the power to finish what his father started. Or to trade it away for a 7-year-old girl's life. Subscribe now. Marcus is about to make an impossible choice. He turned back toward Cutter, the hard drive in his outstretched hand. Here. Take it. Just let her go. Cutter's smile widened. Bring it here, kid. Let me see it. Marcus started walking, but Reaper grabbed his arm. Wait. Let go. Marcus whispered. This is the only way. They'll kill you the second they have it, Reaper hissed. You know that, right? I know. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Reaper saw what Marcus had already accepted. This was always how it was going to end. One life for another. The son paying the debt his father had left behind. Reaper's grip loosened. Marcus walked forward, crossing the distance between them and Cutter, every step feeling like walking toward his own execution. He stopped 3 feet away and held out the hard drive. Cutter reached for it, and Marcus dropped it. The hard drive hit the polished floor with a crack, and in the split second everyone's eyes followed it down. Marcus moved. He grabbed Lily, ripped the tape from her mouth, and screamed at the top of his lungs. Now, 2 things happened at once. Rita's rifle cracked from the second floor, and the Viper standing closest to Lily dropped with a bullet through his shoulder. At the same moment, Marcus heard a sound he never expected: police sirens. Dozens of them, converging on Union Station from every direction. Cutter's face went from confident to furious in an instant. You called the cops? No, Marcus said, backing away with Lily in his arms. I called the FBI. And then he pulled out his phone, the one Rita had given him 3 hours ago, the one he'd been using to live stream everything since the moment they'd walked into the station. The screen showed 47,000 viewers watching in real time as Cutter stood over the hard drive, his face fully visible, his men armed and exposed. Evidence is already uploaded, Marcus said breathlessly. Cloud storage. 5 different servers. Even if you kill me, it's over. Your operation. Your corrupt cops. All of it. Cutter's face twisted with rage. He lunged forward, pulling a gun from his belt, but he never got the shot off. Reaper hit him like a freight train, tackling him to the ground. Fists flew. Bodies collided. The other Vipers moved to help their boss, but the Hell's Angels were already there, pouring in from every entrance, outnumbering them 2 to 1. Marcus ran. He didn't look back. He just held Lily tight against his chest and ran toward the main exit where federal vehicles were screeching to a halt, agents pouring out with weapons drawn and badges raised. Hit like if you're still here. You won't believe how this ends. An FBI agent, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression, intercepted him. Marcus Chun. He nodded, unable to speak. You're safe now. Both of you. She gently took Lily from his arms and handed her to a paramedic. Then she looked back at Marcus with something that might have been respect. Your father would be proud. Marcus's legs gave out. He sank to the ground, shaking, tears streaming down his face as the chaos unfolded behind him. Gunfire, shouting, arrests. The Vipers being dragged out in handcuffs. Cutter screaming threats that no one was listening to anymore. And Reaper, walking out with blood on his knuckles and Lily in his arms, looking like a man who'd just gotten his entire world back. 3 weeks later, Marcus sat on the porch of a small house in Pasadena, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. It wasn't his house, not technically. It belonged to Reaper, who'd insisted Marcus stay with them until social services figured out what to do with a 12-year-old kid who'd just helped the FBI dismantle one of the largest criminal organizations in Southern California. Lily sat beside him, coloring in a book, her legs swinging off the edge of the porch. She'd barely left his side since that night. Nightmares still woke her up screaming sometimes, but she was getting better. They both were. The front door opened, and Reaper stepped out, holding an envelope. He sat down on Marcus's other side, his expression unreadable. This came today, he said, handing it over. From the FBI. Marcus opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter thanking him for his cooperation, informing him that 17 people had been arrested based on the evidence from his father's hard drive, and offering him placement in witness protection if he wanted it. At the bottom was a handwritten note. We also located Rosa Delgado. She's alive and wants to meet you. Call the number below when you're ready. Marcus stared at the number, his heart pounding. The woman from the photograph. The woman his father had trusted. She was alive. You going to call? Reaper asked. Yeah, Marcus said quietly. I think I am. Reaper nodded. Then he did something Marcus never expected. He put his arm around Marcus's shoulders and pulled him close. Not rough, but gentle. Protective. You've got a home here as long as you want it, Reaper said. You saved my daughter. That makes you family. And family doesn't get left behind. Lily looked up from her coloring book and smiled. The first real smile Marcus had seen from her since that night. You're staying, right, Marcus? Marcus looked at her, then at Reaper, then at the sunset painting the sky in impossible colors. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Yeah, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm staying. The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. Reaper stood up, frowning. Wasn't expecting anyone. He walked to the door and opened it. Standing on the porch was a woman Marcus had never seen in person, but he recognized her immediately from the photograph. Rosa Delgado, mid-40s now, gray threading through her dark hair, but the same kind eyes. She was holding a photograph of her own, the same one Marcus had. Her and his father, smiling outside the diner. Hello, Marcus, she said, her voice gentle. Your father sent me. And before you ask, yes, he's still alive. The world stopped. Marcus's heart stopped. Everything stopped. What? He whispered. Rosa smiled through tears. He's been in witness protection for 8 years. Couldn't contact you. Couldn't risk it. But now that the Vipers are gone, now that it's finally safe. She held out her hand. He's waiting for you. If you want to see him. Marcus couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. His father was alive. Alive. He looked at Reaper, who nodded once. Permission and blessing wrapped in one gesture. Then Marcus took Rosa's hand, and together, they walked toward a future he never thought possible. A future where broken families could be made whole again. Where homeless boys could find homes. Where hope wasn't just a word. It was a promise.